your screenplay, know the rules, follow the rules, and then when you're finished, just break them. That's what I did. It was great. I created my story in a nice little mold. And then when I had it where I wanted it, I took the boundaries away and everything just started flowing really well together. But I'm going to give you the mold for you to use as you're starting to set up. Page by page analysis. Number one, focus on the open image. The open image. What is the mood and the tone of your open image? Because that sets the mood and tone for the whole film. Your final scene is going to be the exact same mood, but you're going to be different, so you're going to see that mood differently. Your characters will be different, so they will see the mood differently. For example, the movie The Notebook. If you've ever seen that movie, it's a love story. The opening scene is a guy on a boat and he's rowing in slow motion in front of a gorgeous red sunset. The sun itself is just blazing crimson. And it's just sad, melancholy music. And then there's an elderly lady in a beautiful retirement home, which is actually a museum in real life. And she's watching the guy canoeing, watching the sunset, and these geese are flying by our window in slow motion. We find out later that they're CGI, computer-generated images, but they look real. But it creates this mood and feel of what you're going to be getting ready for. In the movie Forget Paris, which is a romantic comedy, it opens up with this very comedic scene of where the protagonist is coaching, I think it's the LA Lakers and San Antonio Spurs. And it's a funny scene, and that sets the tone. It gives you an idea that he's reffing the game, and he's really staunch on his calls, and it sets his tone for the film. That's your first part. Number two is next thing you need to be thinking about is your theme stated. Your supporting character or your main character asks someone a question, and then that question will find it being answered in different ways throughout the film. Or they'll just make a statement. So in the movie City Slickers, they ask in the very beginning, what's the meaning of life? The meaning of life for you is this one thing. And then that question kind of pops up throughout the film. What's this one thing? What's this one thing? And then in the end, he realizes everybody's one thing is different, so you just have to figure that out on your own. Like, what is your purpose? What makes you happy? What's that one thing for you? But it's revisited. It's not revisited a lot, and they'll tell you, if you want to teach someone a lesson, make a documentary, don't make a film. Film's for entertainment. So don't make a film because you want to teach somebody something. If you want to do that, save that for the other stuff. This is just for entertainment. But in The Notebook, he and Allie, after they meet each other and they go through their, cat and mouse chasing and all that, they go to the cinema and they're walking along the street. This was within the first 10 minutes of the movie. They're walking along the street and he asks her, she says, "Oh, I saw the movie. It was wonderful. I haven't seen a movie in years." And Noah looks at her and is like, "What are you talking about? You haven't seen a movie in years?" And she says, "Well, I'm really busy." And Noah says, "Well, what are you busy doing?" And she says, "Well, I have piano classes, and I have Latin classes, and math, and science, and English, and Mom and Dad and I, we decide everything together." And he was like, "You decide everything together?" She's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Everything?" She goes, "No, not everything, but the important things." And he was like, "Well, I just kind of got the impression that you were free." And she goes, "Well, what do you mean?" And he was like, "Oh, I just got this idea that you were free to kind of just do what you want. Like, you just seem like a kind of person that you would want to do what you want." And she says, "Well, I do what I want." And he says, "No, you don't, because you just told me you haven't seen a movie in years. You're 17 and you haven't seen a movie in years." And he says, I think you should just do what you want." And he says, "Come on, I want to show you something." And she says, "What are you doing?" And he gets out into the middle of the street, and then he's under the stoplight, and he lays down on the street. And she goes, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Come out here." She goes, "No." And he goes, "I thought you were a person who did what you want." And she goes, "Okay." So she comes and she lays down, and they're laying down on the highway, and they're looking up at the light as it's changing. And he says, "Me and my dad used to do this as a little kid." Well, the theme was, do what you want. Like, why don't you do what you want? And if you see, and one of the things they point out is throughout the entire movie, we're coming back to that, where Noah is constantly coaching Allie to do what you want. And then at the climax of the movie, when the conflict is the tightest, when she's came back into his life and she's leaving, he says, "Why don't you stay?" And she says, "Because no matter what I do, somebody's going to get hurt. I have a fiance, he's going to get hurt. I have these parents, they have these dreams for me, they're going to get hurt." And Noah says, "What do you want?" And then the entire movie hems on Allie's decision. Will I do what I want, or will I always just keep doing what my family and my friends tell me to do and what society expects of me? But you see that throughout the entire movie. Noah is constantly trying to get her to understand you should go and live your life and do your hopes and dreams. And what do you want? But it's set up from the very beginning. You just have to be looking for it. Number 3. Your first 10 pages, and each page equals about 1 minute in screenplay. So 1 page of your screenplay equals 1 minute of the movie, 1 minute of screen time. So that's why it's kind of standard to write a 120-page screenplay. So 120 pages is 2 hours. And that gives Hollywood the ability to kind of, your movie's not going to be too short or it's not going to be too long, because even whenever you shoot that screenplay, it's not going to be exactly 120 minutes. These are rules that you can break later, but you have to master them first. And that's the thing. Master the rules, and then when you master them, then you can break them. Within your first 10 pages, introduce or hint at every single character that's going to have a major role. Don't bring in a key player on page 35. If he cannot show up until page 35, at least have a photograph of him early on and have your characters talk about it. Now, one of the techniques in Indiana Jones' The Last Crusade movie is that about halfway through the film, Indiana Jones encounters the leader of the Nazis. And that person has a lead role throughout the rest of the film. Well, they did something really smart. What they did is they made him a spy in America during the first act who has a conversation with Indiana Jones. And they even did something even really cool too. They put some irony in there where the leader of the Nazis tells Indiana Jones, he says, "Don't trust anyone once you get over to Europe and Africa and the Middle East. Don't trust anybody." And then when he pops up later on in the film, they say, "Well, how did you get in this position?" And then the guy stands up and turns around and you see him and he says, "Because he didn't take my advice. He didn't take my advice when I told him not to trust anybody." And he kind of smirks at him. So, yeah, we got introduced to him very briefly. The scene was no longer than 1 minute, but it allowed us to see one of the main characters now so that we wouldn't be so surprised by him later in the film. Does that make sense? All right, number 4, your inciting incident has to take place before page 12 to 15. The inciting incident. What is the inciting incident? The inciting incident is you're writing Indiana Jones Part 5, and he's giving a lecture. He's 70 years old. He's getting too old to go on all these excursions, and he gets a phone call. And that phone call says, "The mummy of King Tut has been stolen from the museum in Cairo. What do we do?" That's your inciting incident. He got the phone call. In a love story, the guy and the girl meet each other. Now that inciting incident can happen on page 5. It can happen on page 3. But it doesn't need to happen later than page 12 to 15. It has to happen early. You have to get that story going, right? You have to get it going. Also, within the first 12 to 15 pages, you need to have your Save the Cat scene. What is Save the Cat? That's why Blake Snyder wrote his book, Save the Cat. It's a bit of a joke. Save the Cat is your hero has to save a cat. We have to like him. We have to know who to pull for. So in order for us to like Indiana Jones, for us to root for him, we have to like him first. So in the beginning of the Indiana Jones movies, he's a great teacher. All the students are listening to him, they're taking notes. One student has "I love you" written on her eyelids so that when she blinks, and he doesn't take advantage of her, right? He is a professional, so he just ignores it. And then another student comes by and drops and puts an apple on his desk as a gift, so his students like him. And as they're going away and his friend walks in and tells him, "Hey, did you find the lost artifact?" They hug each other, right? These are Save the Cat scenes. When he's about to, in the very beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark, he and a sister are going and they're having to go through all these booby traps to get a golden statue. And Indiana Jones stops him occasionally, says, "Wait." And then he puts his hand in the light and darts shoot out. So he just saved his assistant's life. Well, when Indiana Jones grabs the golden statue, his assistant turns his back on him and leaves Indiana Jones to die. And he says, hey, throw me the golden statue, and throws it to him. And then he just leaves Indiana Jones to die. So what we did here is not only did we set it up to where we would like Indiana Jones, but we contrasted it with a very, very bad guy. So now it makes Indiana Jones look even better. You see how they did that? So he saved him, and then this guy turns his back. He betrays Indiana Jones. So it makes Indiana Jones, it makes his goodness, it pronounces his goodness. Does that make sense? Okay. Save the cat. It can be manifested in different ways. In the movie The Green Zone, the American soldiers get some of the Arab Muslim kids out of the way of the tanks so they don't get run over. And they say, stay over here, be safe over here. That's a save the cat. In between your inciting incident and page 25, there needs to be the debate. Indiana Jones gets the phone call, but now he has to decide what he's going to do. I'm too old. I don't want to. My dad's dead and I'm depressed and I don't want to partake in those things anymore. Let someone else do it. I want to retire. But as a writer, you make things happen to him. You put him through the grinder to where he has to go. Bring people to him, begging him. And there's your conflict. You're in his room begging him. His best friend is begging him. Nobody else can do it. Only you can do this. So-and-so got killed by the natives last week in the Amazon. No, this person's in jail now. This person can't do it. You are the only one. And if we don't recover the mummy, it's going to be sold to the Russians and the Cold War is going to start again. You're the world's last hope. He has no other choice. He has to do it. And if he said no and walked away, the movie's over. Right? What kind of story? How can we get behind a hero like that, right? Done. Okay, page 25. And the way they get this idea is like 25% of your film is Act 1. The last 25% of your film is Act 3. And that middle 50% is going to be your Act 2.